CB5.
Good morning, Madam Deputy. Dr. Bola is here, Chair.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Great to hear from you. CB6.
Good morning, Rafael Morde, Community Board 6.
Good morning, Rafael. CB7.
Good morning, Carla Cabrera Carrera, Bronx Community Board 7.
Good morning, Jahaira Arias, Chair, Community Board 7. Happy holidays.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, Carla. CB8.
Good morning to everyone. Healthy and happy. Laura Spalter, Chair, Community Board 8.
And good morning, this is Kira Gannon, District Manager. Happy holidays, everyone.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, Kiara. Great to see you both. CB9. CB10. CB11.
Good morning, Madam Deputy. This is Serena Muniz, Chair of the Community Development and Budget Priorities Committee. Present. Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy
Feliz
holidays. Gracias. Thank you. CB12.
Good morning, Beatrice, Chair. Happy holidays to everybody and Happy New Day.
Good morning, George Torres, Community Board 12.
Good morning, George. Good morning, Madam Chair. Thank you all for joining us. Moving to council members. District 8, CM Diana Ayala. District 11, CM Eric Dinowitz.
Good morning, Deputy, and good morning, everyone. Tim Beer from Councilmember Eric Dinowitz's office. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Great to see you. District 12, CM Kevin Riley.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Madam Deputy Simone Jones, Chief of Staff for Councilmember Riley, present.
Good morning, Simone. District 13, CM Marjorie Velasquez. District 14, CM Pierina Sanchez.
Good morning, Madam Deputy. Samantha, Chief of Staff for Councilmember Sanchez. Hello, everyone.
Good morning, Samantha. District 15, CM Oswald Feliz. District 16, CM Althea Stevens.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Tyreek Israel, Deputy Chief for Councilmember Althea Stevens.
Good morning, Tyreek. District 17, CM Rafael Salamanca.
Good morning, Madam Deputy. Shannon Knotts representing Councilmember Salamanca.
Good morning, Shannon. Great to see you. District 18, CM Amanda Farias.
Good morning, everybody. Randy Malman, Chief of Staff for Councilmember Amanda Farias. Good to see everybody.
Good morning, Randy. All righty, great. Thank you once again for attending. We have a jam-packed agenda as always, but I just want to acknowledge that this is our last borough board of the year. Thank you all for your patience, for being present, for collaborating, and for bringing forth the questions that are necessary and working with our city agencies and our presenters to ensure that our borough gets the equitable resources that it deserves. So again, I want to thank each and every one of you for your patience with the new administration, for welcoming us and holding space while we're having some really good conversations that are moving our borough forward. So I just want to acknowledge you all for that. Thank you for your contributions. So we'll get right into it. This morning, we have a presentation from our very own NYC Commission on Human Rights. We have Orlando Torres and Aya Abba Jalali. I hope I am pronouncing your last name correctly. Please correct me if otherwise.
It's fine. It's Al Gabiali.
Got it. Okay. With an overview on the salary transparency law. So, Commission, please take it away, and thank you so much for this presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Madam Deputy President. Happy to be here with everyone today. I'm just going to share a PowerPoint, if that's okay. It's not a very long presentation, but we do want to give time if necessary for any questions and stuff. So Ayad is going to start us off, and then And then, yeah, I'll finish it up and we'll see if anyone has questions.
Sure. Thank you so much, Orlando. Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be here, and so happy to see familiar faces and names. Again, my name is Ayad El-Gabieli, and I'm the Associate Human Rights Specialist at the New York City Commission on Human Rights. We're going to be presenting today on the human rights or the salary transparency law that went into effect on November 1st. So the New York City Commission on Human Rights, we're a city agency, of course, right? That's in charge of enforcing the human rights or the city laws, city human rights law, and educate the public and on their rights and obligations under the law. Our mandate is really just to prevent and protect all New Yorkers from any type of discrimination or harassment. History, Committee on Unity, and it was, it was established by Mayor LaGuardia in 1944 to make New York City, as it says on the code here, to make New York City a place where people of all races and religion may work and live side by side in harmony and have mutual respect for each other, and where democracy is a living reality. And, over the decades and years and different administrations, the commission have evolved in including new protections, and we'll talk more about that. So what is the commission? We have different branches at the commission. The two main branches is the Community Relations Bureau, which is us, me and Orlando come from, which we promote, equality, understanding, mutual respect, and also work with the public, both the private institutions and public institutions, such as faith-based community organizations, elected officials, and much more. And most importantly, we educate the public. We educate, regular New Yorkers and lead programs and campaigns and host also trainings and presentations like this one. And the other main branch, which, is the Law Enforcement Bureau, which accepts complaints, initiate investigations, files commission, initiated cases, and bring those cases before oath, which is the city's Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings. And then we have the Office of Mediation and Conflict Resolution, which provides, mediation services to facilitate resolution of cases filed with the law enforcement. And the cases that are referred by the Law Enforcement Bureau, and all parties must agree to mediate. And it's very, independent from any other commission office to ensure, of course, neutrality. And then we have the Office of the Chair, which, includes our commissioner, issues the final decision, orders, and legal enforcement, guidance, and rules and regulations, which also works with, engages in policy discussions with commission stakeholders like the mayor, city council, and much more, and the public, of course. So what is the city human rights law, right? So again, when you think of that law, or when you hear CCHR, the Commission on Human Rights, just think that the first thing that should come on, in your mind is prohibits discrimination in several areas that include employment, public accommodation, housing, discriminatory harassment, and bias-based profiling by law enforcement. In most cases, the incident of the discrimination must have occurred within the last year to file a complaint with us or with the commission. But for gender-based harassment, the time period has been extended to 3 years. And these incidents, or we only take cases that cover incidents in New York City. Individuals may also file a claim in court up to 3 years after the last discriminatory act, instead of going to the Law Enforcement Bureau, at the NYC Commission on Human Rights. So in order to take a case, we need to establish the discrimination, and you must generally show that the discrimination occurred and that a certain relationship exists between the people involved to be covered by our law. For instance, employee, of course, will have a direct relationship with an employer. a tenant with a landlord, and a customer with a public accommodation. So discriminatory harassment and bias-based profiling are different and will be covered later in the presentation. So employment discrimination and protected classes. And we'll talk more about the protected classes, but today we're just going to be very brief on the law that just passed because we want you guys to be, informed. But these are some of the protected classes in under the law, which I think about, correct me if I'm wrong, Orlando, but we have about 28 protected categories, and these are just some. So who is protected? Individuals may file with the City Commission on Human Rights if they work in New York City. The employer has 4 or more employees. For most areas of protection, 1 or more for domestic workers. The reason we say domestic workers, especially 1 or more, because we have new protections that were enforced or went into effect earlier this year in March 2022 for domestic workers. So please, if you have constituents who are domestic workers and they're reporting any type of discrimination or anything happening, please let us know. We'll, I think I know many of you as well as Orlando. We'll share our contact on the chat, so please connect them to us. We're here really to help. The last incident again with discrimination occurred within the last year, but remember you could always file your own court case within, and they will take it even within 3 years of the last discriminatory act. Next, please. So determining if an employer has 4 or more employees. So what the commission looks at is the employers themselves, independent contractors and freelancers, employers, parents, spouse, domestic partners, or child if they're working there. And this is the most important thing, right? Employees do not need to all work in the same location or in NYC making this calculation. For instance, if I am an employer and I have 4 different bodegas, right? Or 3 different bodegas, typically a bodega will only need 2 workers, a cashier, or maybe a deli or a stock, someone to do the inventory. So the commission will look at, those 3 different locations and calculate the employee size. So protections in employment, right? We many kinds of employees have are protected under the law, including interns, either paid or unpaid, undocumented workers, part-time workers, domestic workers, independent contractors, and freelancers.
Great. Thanks so much, Ayad.
Thank you.
So sorry for not introducing myself at the beginning, everyone. I'm Orlando Torres. I'm the director of the Bronx office for the Commission on Human Rights. I work closely with Ayad Al-Gabiali, Samelis Lopez, Tabitha Gonzalez. Many of you probably know some of them. And so Ayad just kind of gave us a brief overview of the commission, how we're structured, a general idea of what the law looks like. And like he mentioned, we're going to focus specifically on salary history law and salary transparency law now, because the transparency law is a kind of a brand new addition to the law that just took effect in the 1st of November. But just to cover what salary history looks like a little bit, because this has been an important part of the law for the past couple of years. Just important to keep in mind that employers cannot ask applicants questions about or make statements intended to solicit information about the applicant's current or prior earnings or benefits. An employer can't ask an applicant's current or former employer or employees about that applicant's current or prior earnings or benefits, and an employer shouldn't be searching public records to learn about, a job applicant's current or prior earnings or benefits. So bottom line is, if you're an employer, you don't want to be asking questions about what an applicant makes or used to make at a former job, right? What you can do as an employer is make statements about what you plan to pay for a position that you're hiring for. You can also ask an applicant what they would like to be paid or what range they're looking for in terms of salary. You just can't make questions about or make statements, trying to find out what that applicant used to make or makes at a current, another job, basically. So something to keep in mind. And then, like I mentioned, in terms of the salary transparency in job advertisements, effective November 1st, any employer with 4 or more employees or 1 or more domestic workers that advertises jobs in New York City has to include a good faith salary range for every promotion, every job, and transfer opportunity that they advertise. Employers have to include a minimum and a maximum salary in that range. So essentially, what that looks like is job advertisements in the past would often say $15 an hour or up to $50,000 a year in annual salary. Those would no longer be following the law in New York City, right? You have to provide a minimum and a maximum number on that job advertisement. So does this new law apply to my job postings? Any employer, as I mentioned, with 4 or more employees or 1 or more domestic workers is covered. All employment agencies are covered under the law, regardless of their size. And there is a temporary help firm exception. This new law does not apply to temporary help firms looking to fill their pool of available workers, but any employer working with a temporary help firm has to follow these new salary laws. Which job listings are covered by this new law? So it's any advertisement for a job or an advertisement for a promotion or transfer opportunity to be performed in New York City, whether that's in the office, in the field, or remotely, is covered under the law. And then all advertisements are covered under the law, no matter the medium, right? So whether it's in a newspaper, on social media, other websites, those advertisements are covered under the law and should follow this new law. So what info must be included in my job advertisement as an employer, right? Employers have to state, like I said, that minimum and maximum salary that they're willing to pay for a position. The range cannot be open-ended. So like the example I gave is there. So like, any salary number and then saying and up or up to are not consistent with the law. So how are we defining salary? It's also important, right, to understand. So salary includes the base annual salary at any job or the hourly rate of pay, regardless of frequency of payment, right? It will not include things like health, life, or employer-provided insurance, paid or unpaid time off work, any contributions to retirement or savings like 401ks. It won't include severance pay, overtime pay, commissions, tips, bonuses, stocks, etc. So how will this law, the salary transparency law, be enforced? Employers and employment agencies who are found to have violated this part of the human rights law may have to pay monetary damages to those affected, amend their job advertisements, or provide other forms of relief. But the Commission on Human Rights will not be assessing civil penalties for the first complaint that we receive about an employer, as long as that employer has fixed that violation within 30 days upon receiving a notice from the Commission, right? So if you're an employer and you get a notice from us that we believe you have violated the salary transparency law, you do have 30 days to make it right, and we will not be levying any penalties or moving forward with action legally. In general, this information applies to all cases that come to the Commission. We can, provide trainings, share training materials, and answer questions in a lot of different languages, both for people who bring claims to us and people who are the subject of the claims. And then where there are allegations of discrimination that are reported to us, we can send letters to employers or housing providers informing them of their obligations and protections under the law. We can investigate them and file complaints. And with those complaints, if they, move through the process, we can impose up to $125,000 in civil penalties for violations and up to $250,000 for violations that are the result of willful, wanton, or malicious conduct. And these penalties are in addition to other remedies that can include but are not limited to ordering to provide accommodations that were denied, mandating attended trainings, back pay, emotional distress damages, and other out-of-pocket expenses related to, the discrimination in question. So just wrapping up a bit, you can contact us in a lot of different ways. As Ayad mentioned, we're going to leave our contact information in the chat. You can always tell your constituents, clients to call 311 and ask for the commission rights, or they can call us directly on our info line, which is 212-416-0197, and I'll leave that number in the chat as well. You can check out our website for the latest and most accurate and diverse information. We have tons of one-page guides for employers, housing and public accommodation providers, the public. We have frequently asked questions, legal guidance, and a lot of this stuff is in many different languages, right? So it can be really useful for folks who are representing and serving, the diverse communities of the Bronx. So that's going to be at newyorkcity.gov/human-rights. And that is our presentation. I want to thank everyone for their time and open it up to questions if there are any.
Thank you so much, Ayad and Orlando, for that very detailed, robust presentation. Any questions? I see a hand or a mitten. Ken Brown.
Thank you, Deputy Borough President. Yeah, it is chilly today. Thank you very much for the presentation. I know our office has corresponded with you a little bit about this, and I just want to clarify what kinds of employment solicitations are covered. So the question came up regarding contract workers, consultants, if there is an RFP, RFI that is issued that would have an employment component. Are those all covered, and how would they be covered? In particular, there's a coalition that we work with that will eventually put out an RFP for a consultant. How would the salary transparency law apply to that?
So if the question is, so I think it would be that, and I can double check this with policy, but my understanding is that any RFP that's looking to hire a consultant would still need to follow this procedure. And then if those consultants are then hiring people themselves, and they also need to follow this law, if that's what you're, if I'm getting the question right. Yeah. So
Spot on.
I will double check that in terms of RFPs, since we obviously I didn't make a mention of that in the presentation, and it's not part of our slideshow. So that's actually a really good point. But I definitely have not heard anything to the contrary. So I would imagine that it's probably best practice to just proceed following that law. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
And I just shared our fact sheet that's available on the website as well. So you could see an FAQ there with like a list of questions and how the commission will go about answering those questions.
And I have a quick question, just for clarity. This implementation is happening immediately, right? Or is there?
Yes, it's taken effect as of November 1st.
Great.
Yep.
Any other questions?
I would just add, if anyone wants this presentation or any other presentation, I mean, the human rights law is very complex, and as you saw, we have more than 20 protected classes. So please do reach out to us, and we're happy to present to your members or community, or invite us if there's anything happening on the ground and would like us to come and share some information with your constituents or community members. Please do let us know.
I have a quick question before I let you both go. On the city level, how quickly, I know that the law is effective immediately, but how quickly are city agencies kind of redrafting their job descriptions to display the changes? And is there a template that the commission is sharing with different city agencies that may be available to our community boards and our elected officials.
Let me get back to you on both. I have not seen a template, I'll be honest with you, that we have. I can't imagine that would be very hard to come up with and send out.
Just as a
So-
guide, I think.
Yeah, sure,
for
sure.
folks.
Um,
Wonderful.
for city agencies. And yeah, I mean, I personally haven't like gone through different agencies to see like what their postings look like as of now. We're not expecting, things to, everyone to kind of be able to change and adjust this at the drop of a dime, which is kind of like why we made it a point to make sure that everyone knows that for that first offense, there is a month period after you've been notified by us to change what needs to be changed. But yeah, I'll get back to you on
Beautiful.
both of those things. Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, CCHR. Appreciate your presentation, and thank you for always joining us and keeping us up to date with the new laws and implementation. Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.
And before we move on to our second presenter, I just want to acknowledge the city agencies that are on the call for everyone's awareness. We have the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs Unit on, the YCD, DEP, Department of Aging, the Comptroller's Office, DOT, DSS, DOHMH, DCP, DOB, DOF, DOE. I hope I didn't miss anyone.
New York City Parks.
And parks. Look at that. Thank you, Val. Thank you for being on. We have a great array of city agency representation. So thank you for being on this morning. And with
Deputy?
that, yes.
I'm sorry, just want to acknowledge transit. The MTA is also up.
And the MTA is on, of course. Thank you, thank you. And with that, we'll move on to our second presentation on the Bronx Metro North stations. And presenting on this topic, we have the Department of City Planning. We have Daniel, Michael, and Laura. Take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet, and thank you for
Great to
inviting us.
see
here.
you.
Good to see you as well. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. We have a very brief presentation. And apologies, we're just jumping from an all-agency meeting. It's a busy week here. Right. Can everyone see my screen now?
Yes. Here we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. So we'll keep this shorter today. We really appreciate everyone inviting us out, having us here for this meeting. We're excited for the planning work. We just wanted to make sure that all of you were aware of some of what we've been doing, but also some important coming timelines for the planning work. So with that, we'll just jump right in. Obviously, the big news last week was the official construction on the 4 new Metro North stations in the East Bronx. We're very excited about this. We often get the question, what are we doing as a city if the state is building the stations? And the answer is our work is totally complementary and has been a great complementary process over the last 4.5 years working with the MTA. They'll build the stations, they'll run the service, but they've really been looking to city to do the planning work. Okay. Just a quick reminder that planning work does involve all 4 stations. This is really important work. It can be everything from sidewalks on the south side of Erskine over by Co-op City to improvements under the Bruckner at Hunts Point and many other kinds of improvements. But more immediately, we have a couple of meetings. We had a meeting Tuesday night, and we'll have a meeting this afternoon at 1 p.m., which will be the second of those meetings to discuss proposed land use actions specifically at Morris Park and Parkchester Van Ness. These are the only 2 stations where land use actions are proposed, and so we need to advance this work, and we're working towards a January 9th scoping hearing, at which time the details will be shared, and we're asking the public to please comment on those, but we're in advance of that having these info sessions. We are well aware that Morris Park has a number of other critical issues that need to be addressed, including traffic circulation and some important capital needs. And we know that Parkchester is a real opportunity to tie together the Parkchester and Van Ness communities that are sort of severed today by Tremont and the conditions along along East Tremont. So we've been focused on that and how we allow for some more housing there, some more jobs and housing over at Morris Park, and some of the retail we've been hearing about as a desire over the last 4.5 years. Just a quick reminder of where we've been for those, or just to lay it out for those that might be new to this, we officially launched on July 31st of 2018 with a working group that was a mix of elected officials, community board members, many others, institutions, community groups that were on the working group. And we very quickly went out. We had meetings in the fall of 2018, workshops really for Morris Park and Parkchester Van Nest. We followed up pretty quickly in the spring of 2019 with some original or initial recommendations for what could be done around those stations, not only regarding housing and jobs, but also looking at basic pedestrian improvements. For instance, the need for sidewalks and improved sidewalks on the north side of East Tremont Avenue, desires for additional connections to the stations, desires for additional park space and that sort of thing. Then in the summer of 2019, we went out and we had our workshops for Co-op City and Hunts Point. Those were great. Co-op City, we were out at the community center right by the library there. And then Hunts Point, we were out at the Point, which I imagine many are familiar with in there. And we had some very successful workshops. We heard a lot about what was needed there. Hunts Point, it was very focused on the condition under the Bruckner and making people feel comfortable getting to and from the station. At Co-op City, it was about what does it look like to really make sure Co-op City is thoughtfully connected to the station, which is near Section 5 of Co-op City, but otherwise is pretty far away. And so there was a lot of talk about buses and that sort of thing. We came out in the spring of 2021 as we tried to figure out a way to keep the planning work going despite the pandemic. And so we came up with a remote way of doing that. We had a remote open house. Perhaps some of you were part of that. We had Zoom sessions, we had small group sessions, we had remote office hours that allowed people to sign up at their leisure and be part of those conversations, but one-on-one. Sometimes people prefer one-on-one conversations, and we were happy to do that and keep it going. We had some long-form surveys. And what we were really sharing in 2021 was an update of the 2019 initial recommendations, as well as some additional detail on Co-op City and Hunts Point. And so we're really where we are now is we had been spending the last year or so taking in that round of comments, working obviously on the side with elected officials, community board partners, others, making sure we weren't missing critical points. And what we're sharing today and what we shared on Tuesday focuses specifically on the jobs and workforce development components of that work, on the open space and public realm, term we use sometimes for that work, and then also on the proposed land use changes to promote additional housing and to help grow the job center, particularly at Morris Park, and to address some of the other concerns that came up during the planning work. This isn't the end of the planning work. We will keep doing this and keep working on what we call implementation for years now. The stations will come online, we're told, in mid-2027. And so we see it, the onus on us as the agencies from the city that are working together to do this work to make sure that really the neighborhoods are ready, are well connected to the stations when they come online, that we haven't missed opportunities or key things. And that's sort of where we are. You can, sorry, I'll go back here quickly. You can see some of the images of the outreach over the years. You might recognize St. Raymond's Elementary School in the second image. I believe the third image was over at Co-op City. And then I'm certain many might recognize the Point there with its yellow walls in the third image, but been out a number of times over the years. We're just previewing here really quickly. I encourage you to either go back to our recording from the Tuesday session, where we also heard from council members Riley, Farias, and Velasquez, and the borough president was kind enough to record a message for us to share during that meeting. You'll hear from Chair Gorodnick as well, and as well as the MTA. But there's a much more detailed step through of the zoning and what we're seeking to accomplish there. But here I'll just say conceptually, you know, we have the station. We're very excited about the station. We're very happy there was a second entrance added on Unionport. That was a big community ask early on in the process. We're working on the potential for potentially additional entrances. You know, this is very early on, but we have a number of large sites, particularly around Parkchester, that offer opportunities to add housing in what is definitely a housing crisis at the moment, but also to add some of those uses we heard about from the community, perhaps some larger retail space that allows for some uses that don't currently exist along East Tremont Avenue, some additional housing in the sort of the reddish areas you can see to sort of transition down to the existing neighborhood context, but really focused on the stations here. This was an early sketch that we shared in 2021, and I think probably a little earlier too, of what it might look like to improve East Tremont Avenue, taking in the comments from the community. Sidewalks on the north side of East Tremont Avenue were a big concern. There will be a plaza that will be built by the MTA. We're trying to understand how we might expand upon that a little bit. Crosswalks, there are no crosswalks for a half mile between Unionport Road and Bronxdale, and so that was a big focus. And so this was just an early sketch from one of our designers to kind of try to bring that to life. Morris Park is unique in itself. It's one of the 10 largest job centers in the city already today. It's growing in its own way today. Some of you might be familiar with the redevelopment of the northern portion of the Bronx Psychiatric Center. So there's a lot happening. We have here Jacobi Hospital. We have the Albert Einstein College of Medicine in Montefiore, sometimes now referred to as Montefiore Einstein. They're under joint ownership. We have Calvary Hospital. We have the consolidated Bronx Psych at the southern portion of the Hutchinson Metro Center here. So there's a lot going on. The station's going to land right in the middle of this. We think there's a real opportunity to build a meaningful plaza here that ties these campuses together. There will be pedestrian connectivity over the rail line. We know that today there's already a really important relationship between the institutions across the rail line. And so we want to facilitate that. In terms of what we're proposing for the zoning, we would like to concentrate the densities around the new plaza. We think this makes sense, a mix of housing and office, retail that complements the plaza and makes it a place that people feel comfortable being in, but also where they can find the kinds of things they want. Moving away from there, slightly more of a mid-density, we're proposing same mix of uses in terms of allowing for office, but also allowing for housing. And then as we move north in the sort of bluish area, you can see, again, similar to over at Parkchester, a thoughtful transition down to the existing communities there, but allowing for more housing and allowing them to move forward. There's much more we could talk about here. Again, I do encourage everyone to, if you're able to go back and watch Tuesday night session or to tune in at 1 p.m. today. This is, just to get some excitement going. This was a conceptual a rendering of what a plaza might look like at Morris Park that has the stairs and the elevator landing. There's still a lot of work to be done here, but we've been working with our agencies partners, including Parks and DOT and others. We've been working with the institutions. We've been working with the MTA to make sure we're not missing opportunities to really highlight this job center in the Bronx, to create a real front door to the Morris Park Job Center, but also to create much needed open space that we've heard about a lot over the years. We really like this plaza example because the way these things work, this was actually a recommendation that came out of one of our very early workshops. We want open space. Someone threw out the idea of a plaza. We started to try to understand where that might even fit in. And we think we've come to a proposal that makes a lot of sense. And so we're excited to advance that. This was just another nighttime rendering of what a plaza might look like at Morris Park. And then just to make sure, and I know very limited time here, we have definitely been out and doing the planning work around Co-op City. Co-op City is unique in that you can see the station is quite a ways away from most of the sections of Co-op City. It's pretty close to Section 5. This was a sketch of the condition down by Section 5. You have I-95 here. The way the engineering works out on the station, it's going to align roughly with DeRimer Avenue, the entrance. And so we've been focused on sidewalks. We've been focused on important crosswalk and pedestrian safety, also buses, having conversations with NYC Transit so we can revisit the design of the bus routes. We know there was a lot of concern when those were redesigned a few years ago. We were out to hear Andy Byford speak to the Co-op City community about that. And we think there are some other opportunities to generally improve circulation and address some of the concerns we've heard about parking and people safely, comfortably getting to and from the station. We heard a lot about lighting, for instance, at night, and we're going to work to address those sorts of things. And then, not to be forgotten, Hunts Point is totally unique in and of itself. This station will be landing where there was a former station, the old Cass Gilbert structure here. for 100 years ago, there was train service to the station. The MTA will be building a plaza here. That is a recent development. We're very excited about that. That'll be on Garrison Ave. There'll be an additional entrance that will provide for more direct connections to Del Valle Square. Importantly, this is the only station that has a close connection to the subway. So we think it'll be a really important point of transfer. And we know that there's a lot of friction created by the noise and the traffic and a lot of the conditions under the Bruckner today. So we're working to address those, understand what the right way to address those is. And so it's a little more focused. And I think also just an important point here is Hunts Point has its Hunts Point Forward plan, excellent plan that was recently released. Planning process led by EDC and the community there. And a lot of that plan reflects our planning work over the years and vice versa. Our planning work reflects that planning work. And it's been an important a bit of coordination over the years. And it is one of the reasons we've kept this very focused on where we can add value so we're not creating planning fatigue for the community either and confusion about who's doing what here. This was just an early rendering, again, I believe from 2020 or 2021, showing what some of those improvements might look like: expanded pedestrian space, reduction of the crossing to a single crossing on this side rather than two, as you see it today. There's a little island if you were to go out there. There have been some developments over the years. We now know that there's an illegal structure here that will be removed, and there will be more direct access to that entrance and some things like that. But again, this was an early sketch of what this might look like. And really with that, I'd just like to end and just note that, again, we've been having public info sessions for the Morris Park and the Parches Venice station areas. We'll come out for Hunts Point and Co-op City in the spring. But Tuesday and then today again at 1 p.m., we'll step through the planning work around the jobs, workforce development, the open space planning work, and then importantly, the land use actions that we're proposing. Sharing a little bit about what we've been doing over the years to make sure everyone's familiar with that, and then talking next steps. Also, very importantly, we have scoping scheduled for January 9th, 2023, so pretty early in the new year, to talk about the proposed land use changes at Morris Park and to launch the official work around understanding the impacts of what the proposal, impacts of the proposal would be. So we encourage people to come out. We can share information about that. That'll be at 2 p.m., I believe, to 5 p.m. that day it's scheduled for. It will be remote. We encourage constituents and elected officials and board members and others to issue comments if there are things that you're seeing there that you think could be improved, or maybe additional ideas you might have. But it's an important step in the work, and so we want to get the word out about it today. We will continue to have meetings into the new year. We're working to understand a concept that was brought to us by the new head of strategic planning for Montefiore Hospital, Ruben Diaz Jr., former Bronx Borough president, this concept of a wellness village and what that means. And we're lucky to have the assistance of the Urban Land Institute, and we look forward to doing a workshop in the spring on that. Again, the Hunts Point Co-op City sessions, and then a release of a more final plan book, including a focus on jobs and wellness planning in the summer of 2023. And we're looking at entering into ULURP sometime in the fall of 2023. And that's kind of where we are right now. That's probably not enough detail, but for the time we have, I think maybe we can end there. And if there are any questions or any other comments from the Bronx team or the DCP team.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael. Any questions from the board? George.
Let's see. George has his hand raised. George, go ahead.
Thank you. Good
I
morning.
love this mitten feature. It's really cute.
Wanted to speak on, I had gotten an email from one of my board members in regards to the Co-op City location and creating additional access points. And he was referencing the Co-op City location is Community Board 10, Council District 12. He wasn't necessarily talking about that access. He was talking about across the Hutch, creating an access point for the folks who live in Community Board 11, Council District 13. Is there any conversation about I think his specific point was adding a pedestrian bridge over the train station or the Hutch. I think it's from Stillwell Avenue. I'm not specifically sure, but creating an access point that way so that you have more people, because I happen to live in Section 5 in Co-op City. We're ecstatic about this and the possibilities, but creating more access points reduces foot traffic and car traffic into Section 5, which only has one access point, which is the Hutchinson River Parkway street, I forget, or avenue, whatever we call it, which is one way into Section 5 and one way out of Section 5. So creating that additional footbridge or some sort of access point allows people to gain access to that. So can you comment on that?
Yeah, I'll just say I appreciate the comment, and I think conceptually I understand exactly where this is coming from. We do know that there's like a pedestrian connection that runs along I-95 today. There had been some initial conversations about how we might better connect to City Island, to be honest, is what we had heard the most about in some of the public sessions, and if there are potential for additional bike connections or whatnot. I had not heard about the connection over the Hutchinson River Parkway, but we'll be having these conversations, and we'll continue to have them. But planning work is not done at all, and so I appreciate it. We'll take note of it. I think our first step will just be to understand the connections that exist, maybe talking with DOT and understanding what is possible there. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Any other questions?
I don't see any other hands raised.
And I know, thank you, Chris. And Michael, I know that there's a video conference information session later on today from 1 p.m. to 2:30. If you can just share the link so that folks can share with their constituency, that'll be helpful.
I'm going to drop that in the chat right now before I sign off, if that sounds good, and we can make sure everyone has that.
And is there language accessibility for the video conference?
Yeah, a very good question. So we have Spanish language accessibility, I think. We may have others, but at least Spanish. And so we'll have a couple slides that will also be read off in Spanish during the session. But there is live interpretation that will be available. So if someone needs that language accessibility, it will be there.
Great. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you again to the Bronx team over at DCP. Thank you for always being available whenever we call. We really appreciate your collaboration and constant information sessions on the Bronx Metro North stations.
Great. Thanks, Janet. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for being here. All righty. So up next, we have our Bronx Borough Commissioner of the Department of Transportation speaking to us about the 2023 Open Streets application process.
Good morning, everybody. Keith Kalb, Interim Bronx Borough Commissioner, Department of Transportation. Thank you for putting us on the agenda this morning. I know it was sort of a last-minute ask, and we really appreciate that. Happy holidays to everybody. I want to just recognize a few folks who are here with me today. I have Teresa Cruz with us today, Jesus Soto with us today, Kevin Perez, all from my office, and we are here to discuss the 2023 Open Streets program. I also have the Senior Program Manager, Kyle Gorman, who's going to be showing you a presentation on our Open Streets programs. And can we give Kyle access to show Kyle's here, right?
Yeah.
Kyle earlier. Okay. So Kyle is going to show you basically the Open Streets program is meant to transform streets into public space open to all. These transformations allow for a range of activities that promote economic development, support schools, and provide new ways for New Yorkers to enjoy cultural programming and build community. Kyle's going to explain to everybody that the application process for 23 is open. And Kyle, if you want to take it away.
Great. Thank you, Keith. And hello, everyone. Thanks so much for having me today to talk all things open streets. I'm going to go through a presentation that admittedly is a little long, so I will go through it quickly because I don't want to take up too much of everyone's time. But there's a lot of really great information and photos here just about the upcoming 2023 Open Streets season. So I'm going to first just go over all the great work that we've did over the last year and then touch on what's coming up for 23 2023, and then also give an overview of a lot of the resources and operational layers and the types of support that we offer to our partners to make sure that Open Streets is a success. So starting off with Open Streets 2022 Wrapped, in the spirit of Spotify Wrapped, our program last year was the biggest and best year yet. I really want to underscore that none of the work that we do with Open Streets is possible without our community partners. So really the partnership piece with different types of community-based organizations is a huge facet of what makes Open Streets what it is and what makes it so successful. So we definitely love to highlight all the partnerships that we've been able to do. There were over 28 miles of open streets at 211 locations across all 5 boroughs of New York City, and 430 city blocks were designated as open streets over the last year. We launched the season in April around Earth Day with the largest Car-Free Earth Day event. Our new commissioner, Commissioner Rodriguez, when he was a council member, really pushed hard for DOT to create this Car-Free Earth Day event, and his new role as our commissioner really wanted us to do the biggest and best Car-Free Earth Day event. Many of you might have known that we transformed Mosholu Parkway in the Bronx as a part of Car-Free Earth Day, transforming the southbound lanes into a space for programming, bikes, pedestrians. We brought the circus. There was a lot of scooter demonstrations and lots of great work. And we did lots of other events all throughout the city too. This one in Woodside on Woodside Ave, another on Avenue B in Manhattan. You know, different types of programming and specific to Earth Day, a lot of like green and ecological oriented and sustainability types of programming. And we were also fortunate throughout the season to be joined with over 50 new partners that joined our mission of promoting the use of streets as public space. In the Bronx, we worked with a group called the Citizens Crime Commission along with Street Lab to activate a new open street on 141st Street in the Bronx. Really great success. And this was a particular site that we've been working in close coordination with the community to sort of start to think in the long term potentially about what's possible and using open streets as kind of a, you know, easy to do, quick build type of activation, and then really start to have bigger conversations about a more formal infrastructure that could potentially be implemented on these blocks. With lots of other new sites around the city too, and in Queens on a dead end street in Adderley Park, another new site in Queens, in Laurelton. Really the core function of open streets, like I said, is partnership, and throughout the pandemic we've been able to work with a more diversified set of partners than ever before, including business improvement districts, formal and informal community-based organizations, schools, and groups of restaurants. I'm going to touch on this in just a few minutes, but the reason why we had a number of new partners with open streets this year is actually because of schools. A lot of you may know that Open Streets is the new home of Play Streets. So we're taking all the great work of the 100-year history that Play Streets has had in New York City and giving it sort of to this love and care that comes along with Open Streets. So if you know any school, public, private, charter, and everything in between, they can apply for Open Streets now. And I'll touch on that later in the presentation. We released an economic benefits report back in October, just demonstrating that open streets actually, in fact, are good for businesses, especially for more of our restaurants and bars and retail style businesses. Open streets corridors across the board were significantly outperforming non-open streets corridors as a part of this analysis. So looking forward to continuing to highlight this as a tool for people who might not understand the benefits of open street or might be apprehensive about open streets, and show that actually no, in fact, that economic development is a huge component here. And like I mentioned earlier, a core function of open streets is kind of helping people reimagine streets as public space, and that really evolves to tapping into DOT's wider transportation and public realm planning toolkits. So some of our open streets grew up, I like to say, and we redesigned as plazas, shared streets, and beyond. 34th Avenue in Queens has new plazas, bike lane features, traffic calming all along this 1.3-mile corridor, a new plaza on Underhill in Brooklyn, and lots of other projects in the queue for 2023, including a few in the Bronx. So by this time next year, we'll have lots of great photos and great things to report on related to some formal transformations of these streets. Also on Halloween, we launched Trick or Streets, which is a new activation layer sort of for open streets. On Halloween, it's actually one of the busiest days of the year for pedestrians. It's unfortunately one of the worst days for injuries and folks getting killed as they walk on New York City streets and actually across the entire nation. So we wanted to go really bold on making sure that not only are we, of course, facilitating amazing spaces for people to celebrate all that comes along with Halloween, but that they were also able to do it in a much more safer manner when you remove cars from the equation. So we launched a lot of great Halloween trick or streets over the last year and looking forward to adding more of those in 2022, including in the Bronx as well. And then finally, one of our most exciting new layers, and you've got one last weekend to check it out if you haven't been, the Fifth Avenue open street in Manhattan along between 57th and 48th Streets was just launched on December 4th, and this upcoming Sunday is the final weekend. It's looking like it's going to be sunny but brisk, so if you want to visit Manhattan and Midtown and take in all the things that this part of the city has to offer during the holiday season, definitely a really amazing transformation of this corridor as a part of holiday open streets. So the last thing I'll just say before we look ahead towards 2023, whereas DOT's core mission, many people think, is just transportation and getting people and goods from point A to point B, we also are in a unique position to really transform our streets, to enhance everyone's quality of life, economic development, community building, social ties. When we make more space on our streets for people to walk, bike, sit, gather, and really come together, we're really greatly increasing the value of one of our most ubiquitous public resources, and that is our streets. Something I like to say is that, not everyone might live near a park or other types of recreation or open space, but everyone has access to a street and sidewalk. So that really puts the Department of Transportation in a unique position to really transform these streets and really enhance like the public realm, like I said, and quality of life, economic development, and so on. So that's a little bit about 2022 open streets. Now getting into the new year, because we want to have new open streets, we want new partners, we want bigger, better, everything greater open streets, especially in the Bronx in 2023. So I'm going to highlight some of what it takes to apply. You already know what open streets are, I think, at this point. Keith gave a great intro to the program, noting that it's basically transforming streets in a public space for all. Lots of different types of things can happen on open streets when they are designated as so, and we work with a whole slew of formal and informal types of organizations to execute open streets citywide. For 2023, we have more resources and support to offer to our community partners than ever before. Really significant investments in the last year have been made into this program. So we are really encouraging all partners to apply regardless of capacity, experience, background, goals, hopes, wishes, desires. We will work with you to right size the level of support so you are set up for success, whether it comes to funding, materials, programming, operational and technical assistance. We have a lot on the table. And a huge part of that is our public space programming initiative that I'll touch on, and concessions, and so on and so forth. So like I said, we work with a whole slew of different types of partners, whether they be formal or informal. We just ask that they have some ties to the community that they're trying to host an open street in. This can include schools, business improvement districts, civic associations, block associations, informal groups of merchants that have come together, groups of neighbors that have come together that might not necessarily even be a part of a block association or something like that. We really want to encourage all types of entities to apply. If a school is applying, though, it must be submitted on behalf of the school's administration, not necessarily a parent or a teacher. It needs to come from someone in the administration arm of that particular school. So there's three main types of open streets. The first is the limited local access. This is a street that is designated for bike and pedestrian use and enjoyment, but it still allows for limited vehicle access and parking and emergency access as needed. And when drivers, though, use the street, they must adhere to an advisory 5 mile/hour speed limits. The next type of open street is the full closure type of open streets. This is where there's no through or local traffic or parking, and the street is completely closed to cars, and a lot of vibrant layers really come to be, such as expanded outdoor dining, programming and activations, just a new open space and for members of the community to come together. This is a great example of that would be Arthur Avenue in the Bronx or Jennings Street as well. So that's where you're seeing a lot of those more vibrant types of activations, like I mentioned earlier. And then the third type of open street is the full closure for schools, which essentially, like I mentioned, replaces play streets. We are allowing for the typical types of activities that took place under play streets, such as expanded outdoor recreation opportunities and outdoor learning. But we also allow open streets for schools to facilitate safer pickup and drop off operations in the morning and the afternoons when there's obviously a lot of activity in and around schools. So here's just a couple photos, just demonstrating all the things that I just detailed about the specific types of open streets. This is a limited local access open street. Here's a photo of a full closure open street. You can see with the outdoor dining, programming and activities, and just generally a lot more space for people to walk, bike, and enjoy a car-free street. And then here's a photo of a play street. This one in particular is being used for recess opportunities, but like I said, we're pretty liberal in allowing the schools for how they use open streets for safer pickup, drop off, recess, play, learning, so on. So there are a few expectations that we do have of our partners. Like I said, we have a lot of resources on the table to support you to execute open streets, but we are expecting our partners to be some level of boots on the ground, advocating for open streets, programming open streets, sometimes helping out with operations and other types of things behind the scenes. You are our community champions in a lot of ways, and there's a few different things that we expect of you with operations, outreach, setting up any programming and movable furniture, light sanitation support, and so on. All of these responsibilities are further detailed in the application. There are a few just application documents that I'm not going to go into great detail right now that you do need to submit as a part of the application. New partners submit a full application and upload all these documents. Returning partners are able to use information that had been previously submitted as well as the documents. So it's a pretty streamlined process. But the docs include a site plan, detailing where things are going on the street, management plan, how you're going to make it happen, outreach plan, how you're going to let your neighbors know about the open street, letters of support that can come from elected officials, community boards, merchants groups, residents, civic associations, and so on. And then a budget proposal, just detailing how much you think it's going to cost you. And then we use this information to put together a funding package and different types of support. I'm just going to quickly skip through these, and I'll share the deck later on after for you all to take a deeper look at some of these examples of the documents. Because the last thing I wanted to highlight on was just the resources and the operational layers that we have here to support our community partners. So there's three main types of support that's offered. The first is funding. You do have to be a nonprofit in order to receive this funding, and it's based on the number of blocks, days, and months that your open street is, as well as an equity factor that is set forth by the streets plan. The New York City Streets Plan does designate certain priority investment areas that DOT has goals of investing a little bit more in these areas, especially from an equity perspective. So there is just that cold hard cash that's on the table to help our partners as well. And then there's a number of other grant opportunities that come up with city agencies, other types of community-based organizations and nonprofits that have also partnered with DOT to offer funding for open streets. Secondly, which is actually one of our most valuable and sought after levels of support, is through a partnership that we have with the Horticultural Society of New York. The Hort, as they're known, is one of our longtime partners at DOT. They have, I think, nearly 100-year history as well in New York City, and many of you might be familiar with them through your own work. But the Hort, through a contract that they have with us, has the ability to manage up to 30 open streets across the city. So this includes providing, setting up barriers, taking them down, horticultural support for planters and tree pits and other types of horticulture opportunities, light sanitation support throughout the day, given that sometimes there is a need for that, and other types of maintenance services that are offered. A number of the sites actually that have been a part of the Open Streets program in the Bronx have actually been receiving this particular level of service, most notably Jennings Street, Willis Ave, and Alexander Ave. And we'd love to throw a couple more sites in the Bronx in the mix for next year, because we realize that we want to make sure that some of our lowest capacity partners actually have this available to them. So like I said at the top of the conversation, we're really encouraging all partners, regardless of background and experience, to apply, and everyone will be considered for these types of services, and we'll reserve them for our highest need partners and in our equity geographies. And then the final level of support is some technical assistance that's offered by us and the Hort as well. We have a brand new catalog of all different types of programming options through the Public Space Programming Catalog that was released just this past year. This is a great planning tool for partners to use to take the funds or their own that we offer, or the funding that they have to activate open streets. Anything and everything is really on this list. Everything from a circus to yoga classes, pop-up libraries, informational services, connecting people to different types of city services and social services. So a really excellent planning tool for our partners. The Hort and DOT, of course, we're always here to help to provide any sort of help with permitting, assistance, navigating the city bureaucracy, working with individuals on the ground, working with elected officials, community-based organizations. We are really here to help. And then the final level of assistance we provide is giving you all the tools for success, the materials, such as movable metal barriers, furniture, signs, cones, and so on. So yeah, we're going to skip that. Like I said, we have a new public space programming initiative with a catalog that has a lot of great offerings on it that people can use to activate open streets. If you want to take a look at the catalog, I'll drop the link in the chat afterwards, but the link on the screen now, nyc.gov/public space programming, is where you can learn more about this initiative and also take a look at the catalog, which is also open to the public to use for things outside of DOT's infrastructure. We really want to encourage, obviously, to use it for open streets and our plazas, but it's definitely a great tool for your work that goes beyond the streets. There's a lot of different things, like I said, that are in the catalog, promoting active and healthy living, such as a yoga class, arts and culture. We brought the circus to a number of open streets all across the city, including in the Bronx this year. Crafts and design, really, promoting the street as a canvas for artists. Learning and education, no better place to read a book and learn something than on a New York City street. Programming for dogs has also been really, really popular this year. One of our open streets in Fort Greene, Brooklyn, 11% of all users of the street are actually dogs. So open streets are definitely there to support dogs and all types of animals if you'd like. And the last thing I'll say about programming is that really do not underestimate the power of the movable chair. People really gravitate to obviously being able to sit, but also being able to sit and gather in the way that they want, ever so slightly just shifting the table or chair, whether to follow the shade or follow the sun or see something that's going on. Everyone, I think, knows that it's great to sort of just take a seat sometimes, but having the movable chair really is a great programming element at the end of the day. I'm going to skip the concessions piece in the interest of time, and just lastly highlight next steps. The application is available online at nyc.gov/openstreets. The deadline for applications is for anyone who's looking to launch before June 30th, has to apply by January 31st. If you're looking to apply July 1 or after, you have to apply by April 14th. If you need any help with applying, we are here to help. We are happy to brainstorm, kind of just throw paint at the wall, see what sticks, and talk you through it, and really provide a boutique level of service to anyone who wants it and needs help with applying. So I'll drop my contact information in the chat. I'm also, I know that there's a lot of community boards and elected officials and other types of organizations on the line today. I'd be happy to come and present at any of your upcoming meetings to talk about open streets, or if you want to connect me specifically to a partner that you know in your network, happy to do that. So really appreciate you all for having me today. Thank you so much. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you so much, Kyle, for giving us the year in review, but also walking us through the process. George, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, hey, thank you. So I have, I guess, a question and a comment. My question is, and this is a little sort of, we're exploring the possibility of an open street versus a request to create a new park. There is an unfinished street in our district on Burke Avenue. I may have discussed this with Keith before, but I think there are benefits to the open streets program. But as I said, it's an unfinished street. So I guess what I'm asking is, would there be capital funding for, because since it's unfinished, it's basically a forest right now. And it's right smack in the middle of private homes that are never going to get this done on their own because they don't have the monies to design a street or file a builder's pavement plan. That this can be created as an open street, and because they're seasonal, it might give them the greatest flexibility. And I know you said that there's some funding, but it might just be easier for you to do this than put it through the Parks Department, which would then involve a decades-long process before it got done. So I was just wondering if there's an opportunity there from the Open Streets program, because that's what we've been debating. And it's right next to Hafen Park, so we already have a park there. But like I said, this is an unfinished street that's sandwiched between private houses. It only runs for 3 blocks, and then it's cut off by the 5 train. So that's my first question. My second question, you touched on this, but my biggest concern with the Open Streets program, and this is just from my experience, we had a group in Woodlawn that had applied for Open Streets, and it seemed very haphazard the way it was granted. I was getting phone calls from the NYPD, like, what the heck is DOT doing? And I'm curious about the coordination because the buses, the MTA was unaware of the buses that run down Webster Avenue. You gave them a significant number of blocks. You basically gave them what they requested, but then there was no management of barricades or anything to that effect. So, for example, I guess they reached out. It was incumbent upon them to reach out to the NYPD to request the barricades, and that's when the NYPD was notified, and they flipped out. So we avoided that.
I'm sorry to interrupt. You said this was on Webster Avenue?
Yeah, Webster Avenue, Woodlawn. I forget the name of the group, Woodlawn something, and they had made
This
the
was,
request.
sorry, George, I just want to clarify. This was north of 233rd, between 233rd and McLean?
Yeah, you gave them 235, maybe 235th Street to like 238th Street or something like that.
And really quickly, I just want to acknowledge the time.
Collective.
We're at
Yeah.
11:24. We have 5 more minutes for the
Yeah.
ending. So I just want
George, can we, thank you, Madam Borough President, Deputy Borough President. George, the issue with Webster, can we talk about that offline?
Well, no, but I think that this is important for all my colleagues and everybody that's doing this, because the problem is the city of the mayor's office and their SAPO unit would not give this to them. Yet you guys did. And that's my concern. And that's my point about the coordination. because when I was in CAU, there were certain streets you guys were going to shut down White Plains Road, and we had to step in and say no to that because of all the buses that were coming up and down just for one person making that request. And that's why, my concern is always on the vetting of these applicants and making sure that these people are not, I'm sorry, I don't have a better way of saying this, the people who are off reservation and just want to do things for doing sake. You have to vet these things incredibly closely because I got the phone calls. NYPD, the precinct commander, Patrol Borough Bronx calling George Torres that doesn't have the authority to grant this. So that's what I'm saying. We don't have to discuss it offline because it didn't happen. The NYPD put the kibosh on it. That also raises another issue. What if you have a situation where the NYPD is saying no to DOT? So, who prevails in that situation?
I'll let Kyle answer that question about the coordination between the NYPD. We coordinate directly with the NYPD, but I'll let Kyle answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say the same thing. I mean, we coordinate with the NYPD. We have the specific people that we coordinate with at NYPD. I am not particularly, up to speed with how everything trickles down there, but, in my experience, that sometimes, to maybe the community affairs officer or to some of the folks who are on the patrol beat, like they're not fully up to speed on open streets, and it might only be at a higher level at NYPD. But totally heard. I'll admit it's a little bit of a one-man show over here at DOT with open streets. It's really just been me predominantly managing this program over the last 2 years. I managed a similar program called Weekend Walks before the pandemic. So I've been doing this type of work for a long time, but totally agree that there's definitely a lot of work to be done on operationalizing this program into sort of just the wider New York City ecosystem and working in close coordination with our partners. I think over the pandemic, we've definitely taken a little bit more of a liberal approach in approving a lot of applications, but in the sort of goal of quantity. But I think a lot more we're going to be focusing on quality moving forward, but also making sure that quality is done in an equitable way because, we realize that it's not always the same case and same groups of folks in every single neighborhood that are able to sort of self-organize and get this off the ground. So that's why we have all these great resources on the table to help our partners. Would be happy to talk with you offline with Keith about Webster. I'm not super familiar with that particular site. So yeah, feel free to reach out to Keith and we can talk more.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And before we break into our borough president's announcements, I just want to give the floor really quickly to Ms. Anita Antonetti with a update and an announcement from DYCD. And thank you all for your patience. I know we're running a little behind.
We'll do it very quickly.
Thank you.
David, can you put up the slides very quickly? And I'll make sure it's clean and neat. So my name is Anita Antonetti. I'm the Senior Director for the Neighborhood Advisory Board Community Action Board Liaison Unit. And what does that mean? We administer the anti-poverty funding that comes from the federal government that's been around for the last 58 years. So we are the community action agency for this city of New York. Go to the next slide, David. And this was the Economic Opportunity Act of 1964 that required communities in poverty, those residents should have make the decisions of what services and programs are in their neighborhood. And towards that end, DYCD created the Neighborhood Advisory Boards, which are made up of 12 members of the community. They serve for 2 3-year terms, and they meet at a minimum 4 times a year, but every 3 years we have to do a community needs assessment to see what's needed in the community. The members are appointed by DYCD. However, the elected officials who are in these poverty areas have the capability to recommend a member to be on the board. So that's the City Council, the State Assembly, the State Senate, and the House of Representatives. They can recommend people to be on the board. The next slide, DYCD. So there are 41 boards across the city. The Bronx has 11 boards, and these areas of poverty are 20% or more of the population is at the federal poverty level. So that's how they are determined. The minimum age to join the board is 16, just like the community boards. As I said before, there's 12 members. They elect officers to the boards, and they're the closest thing to their community. So they really give good advice to DYCD about the programs. They do the community needs assessment. They also, once the data is analyzed, they look at it, they see the priorities, they decide which priority, the top priorities that they're going to fund, and they also allocate the funding for those priorities. They can then, if an RFP has been issued, they will read the proposals and rate the proposals. So they're all in the decision making as to which programs are in the community. Next slide, Dave. And this is for the composition of the boards, and I will send this all in so that you all have this. Next slide, David. And these are the benefits that the members can expect to achieve, but many of them, we even have community board members as neighborhood advisory board members. There's no conflict of interest. We've even had district managers, if you're interested, be on the board as well. So there's no conflict of interest with there either. Next slide, Dave. So as I said, this year we are doing the community needs assessment, and we have our survey online for the first time. Usually it's just a paper survey, but now we have it online. We also have the paper survey. The online survey, the first page, there's 12 different languages that the person can take the survey in, whichever is preferred. They can select that right off and answer the questions and submit the survey. We do have paper surveys, so if any of the community boards or any of the community board members would like paper surveys, we also have them in the 12 different languages. So that's pretty much, and we're collecting these surveys. We're collecting it to the end of the year because this is a 2022 survey. We do this survey every 3 years. Any questions? I know it was fast, but I'm available to answer any
amazing.
questions. I will put my contact information in the chat, and it's great to be home. Bronx is home for me. I'm so happy to
Yes.
see so many people that I've worked with over the years and still are neighbors. Thank you, Deputy Borough President.
Thank you so much, Miss Anita, for being here and again responding to our call on such short notice and offering this presentation in record-breaking time. Really appreciate it. Any questions for DYCD? That was amazing. Wonderful. All right. We want to thank all of our presenters. Thank you all so much. I know that we went over time, but every single presenter provided us with very important information and very important deadlines. Before I go into my announcements, any of that, I think DOF had an announcement. And for folks, if you can look at the chat, a ton of resources are being shared, from contact information to surveys to PowerPoint presentations. So please take advantage of the information that's being shared via the chat. Really quickly, I'll go into the Office of the Bronx Borough President announcements later on tonight. Oh, I do have DOF. Mike, do you want to go really quickly?
Okay, really quickly, am I unmuted?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. This week, along with the Mayor's Public Engagement Unit and the Department of Aging, the Department of Finance participated in a week of action. They call it Harlem to Hollis. It is to engage people in the rent freeze program and other money saving programs from the agency During COVID-19, we saw a decrease in the participation of these. And as a part of a number of different efforts, we will be at older adult centers across the city to engage and to enroll people in the programs. I'm going to put the locations that where we'll be in the Bronx, in the chat, so that you can see it. And it's starting as soon as next week, starting on the 20th and then the 27th and then into January. I'm going to put that information into the chat. So that's for the community boards and locations that have many tenants that are in rent stabilization. For the areas that are heavily in co-ops and condos, there's also the condo and co-op abatement. Now, this is the time where um, owners of co-ops and condos should alert their management that this is their primary residence. The management must re-up or to stay into the program if they choose to participate. It's been linked to a prevailing wage law that was passed, so they're going to elect whether they're going to be in the program or not. But contact your management to find out about that, if they are in or out for the coming tax year. And finally, for the community boards that are heavily homeowners, 1 to 3 family homes, upcoming will be the notice of property value that is sent out to all homeowners, and we'll be doing outreach in the community as well for those who have questions about their market value and assessed value and getting exemptions. So look for that coming in January. That's my announcements, and guys, have a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much, Mike. And yes, please share the resources and the upcoming events in the Bronx. That would be really helpful. Alrighty, so I'll try to match Mike and Anita's speed here. From the Office of the Bronx Borough President, tonight we have our Reso A Capital Funding Workshop for Bronx educators. It'll be hosted from 6 to 9 p.m. at Hostels Community College, Building C, over at the Hostels Cafe. Proof of vaccination or a negative PCR test result is mandatory to gain access into the building. I'll drop that information in the chat as well. So for any Bronx educators, schools, local schools, please encourage them to attend our Reso A Capital Funding Workshop. Our HIV Council is hosting their quarterly virtual meeting, the HIV Roundtable virtual meeting. It'll be held this Wednesday, December 21st from 3 to 4. We also have a RSVP link, Mara, so if you can just drop that in the chat for us as well. And in the spirit of the holidays and our holiday season, we are hosting our menorah lighting on the 20th of December at 5 p.m. right here at 851 Grand Concourse, followed by our other menorah lighting celebration on the 21st at 10 a.m. at the Riverdale YMCA. Hope to see you all there. And followed with our Dia de Reyes, our Three Kings Day event. We've scheduled it for the 4th of January at LPAC. More details to follow, as well as our Martin Luther King celebration event scheduled for the 16th and location to be determined as well. Again, our final last Borough Board of the Year 2022 was a blessing and a test, but we all made it through. Thank you all so much again for your collaboration, for your coalition and your support. We look forward to our continued collaboration, our continued partnership. And again, we thank you all for your patience through and through in this virtual world. And hopefully, we'll have more in person in the coming year. Happy holidays. Feliz Navidad, Feliz Año Nuevo, Happy New Year. And I'm sure I'll see a ton of you throughout the week and over the weekend on our, amazing toy giveaways. Thank you all. Thank you to our presenters. Be well.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Stay warm.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Be well, be healthy.